in Canadian journalism, spanning across the globe, covering world events as a foreign correspondent, covering events locally through Senate committee work, through grassroots advocacy, through the support of community organizations across this country, has done a tremendous amount of work to advance the cause of understanding and treatment and respect for Canadians living with autism. And we here on Prince Edward Island, through the Autism Society, have been very fortunate to have benefited from Senator Munson's friendship and his encouragement and his support over the last number of years. And that's why it's always a delight to have him here. So at this time, without any further ado, I would like to call upon the Senator to say a few words.
Well, finally a podium I can look over the top. There's not very much going on in the Senate these days, so I thought it'd be nice to come to the island. And I was just thinking that this is about Vic tonight, but I think we should call this the Queen's Diamond Jewel medal presentation. Jubilee is there, but I think this is what really this is all about with Colleen and Vic and so on. But it's been 3 years since I've been here with the Autism Society of PEI. I do come back quite a bit to play golf with, as I would say, some of my maritime buddies from Halifax and New Brunswick, and so it's always wonderful to come to PEI. And autism is an issue which is close to my heart and also to my wife's heart. We did not have an autistic child, but we had a little boy who was Down syndrome. And he is the motivation behind what I do as a senator in dealing with these issues. He passed away just before he reached the age of 1, and he'd be 44 now. Timothy James Alexander Munson, born in Bathurst, New Brunswick. And he has been sort of the spiritual and the guiding light of what we do as a family in making sure that we try to give voice to those who don't have enough voices in dealing with this issue. And so part of the speech is on behalf of Jewel, and the other part is on behalf of Timmy. When I was here about 3 years ago, autism, the numbers were 1 in 110. Now it's 1 in 88. That's just 3 years ago. So Canada is facing an increasingly complex and significant challenge. And one of the issues that I've been dealing with recently, and part of my own strategy, is now talking about autism with First Nations people, because it is a federal government responsibility. So even without the benefit of hard data, we can easily gauge that the situation is critical. And the federal government has to get a grasp and take responsibility of what is happening. And the Autism Society of PEI has been trying to do that over the years, on a very personal level, and autism groups across this country on a very personal level have been trying to do that. And every day, and this is one of the major worries and why I work in this advocacy part of my life as a senator, that thousands of children with autism or ASD are entering adulthood with huge personal and social implications. And many of you in this room know firsthand the stresses related to changes in routines and available resources and services that occur as children grow up and turn 18 and beyond. And of course, it is not only the children who are getting older, with all great respect, the parents who care for them are too. A fact that brings even more worry and uncertainty. This last few weeks in Ottawa, the Ottawa Citizen has been publishing profiles, and it's been a 7-part series, and it's fascinating. And there's a profile of a woman who was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. For most of her life, she was high functioning, and she even held a job for a few years. Now she's in her 30s, so we have to pay attention to it. And she began to change and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Her mother believes she does not have schizophrenia at all, and that the doctors have misunderstood her daughter, who has trouble verbalizing her thoughts. And to make matters worse, in this particular case, the antipsychotic medications she has been prescribed are worsening her ASD symptoms. So in the coming years, and I think this is a warning shot, that I expect we'll be hearing more and more stories about adults with a dual diagnosis of autism and mental illness. As the autism crisis spreads through the society, and I believe it is a crisis, the situation is becoming desperate. But we have to remember it is not hopeless. In the past few years, Health Canada has been assigning more and more staff to monitor cases and to build a knowledge base about autism in our country. And we've been calling for this in the preamble to a bill I'll talk about very briefly. We've been calling for a national autism spectrum disorder strategy, seems like now forever. But the government will have to share this data with the provinces, like the province of PEI, to incorporate in their plans for health care in other areas under their jurisdiction, and we can be one step closer to a national autism strategy. So it's been a complicated 3-year journey for me, and if you can indulge you in this, what happened to me walking onto the Hill one day, a year after I was appointed to the Senate, there was a gentleman, a bureaucrat, standing by the Centennial Flame, and he had a billboard on saying, "My son is 2 years old, he is autistic, please help me." And so that's the other part of the inspiration of doing this sort of thing. A man, a bureaucrat, every day by the Centennial Flame saying, "You've got to help me." And he said, "Munson, when you worked at CTV, you will not walk by me." And I didn't walk by him. And I learned so much this role as a senator of what I can do with those who don't have a voice. So I introduced this bill called an act respecting World Autism Awareness Day, and I thought that would be a simple act, a simple thing. It's not about celebration, it's about recognition and awareness. That took 3 years, but it became law in November for Jubilee. And the reason why I'm so thrilled that it became law is that we can now, if you look at the preamble to my bill, we can do even more in terms of working towards a national autism spectrum disorder strategy. At the very basis of this, at least for the Aboriginal children of this country, that the federal government has a responsibility for, something else can take shape. This evening's gathering you really are true activists. So I remain convinced that a national strategy to address the inequality in support of children and families will come. And I know there's issues about the Senate, but I'm only 66.5 years old. I still have 9.5 years to go, and I will not rest. Along with all of you, I will not rest until we do see that strategy. My wife and my wife, I'm sorry she's not here tonight because she is a tireless worker, and we've traveled this country, and we're in British Columbia last week at UBC and this group called NeuroDevNet. They have this network of centers for excellence supporting transformative research and works with a network of players in brain research and applied health care solutions. And there are so many best practices out there that we can all share. Reading the New York Times just yesterday reaffirmed this dream of ours of doing more. There was an item there that fired up my interest, and I'm sure it fires up yours, because in our imagination in this week's news is that President Obama is about to announce the creation of a new exciting project. And they're talking about this in the terms of when we talked as young people how excited we were in the 60s about President Kennedy's space project in the 60s. And it's a creation of a multi-year research effort. We're talking billions of dollars to produce an activity map of the human brain. And in the Times article it says, and I quote, "This effort could develop new tools and techniques that would lead to a much deeper understanding of how the brain works, how the brain changes over time in response to learning." For instance, the article goes on to predict that there should be clinical benefits as well. The knowledge developed could enable biomedical scientists to find more accurate ways to diagnose and treat depression, schizophrenia, dementia, autism, stroke, Parkinson's, and other illnesses of the injuries of the brain. So this is the kind of vision you see that's coming in the United States of America. It's the kind of vision that Canada needs. This country needs to a much greater measure into this kind of vision. And I feel that a national autism spectrum disorder strategy will push the boundaries of what we know and what we traditionally have been practicing in mental health and support services. And in terms of best practices, watching the way that things that happen here, there's a Dr. Herb Emery of the University of Calgary who is researching ways of improving the issues of support to autism family, and he believes also. So it's about building alliances and building bridges across this country to get to this strategy. Because I've said before, and I'll say it again, I am from New Brunswick. I am an Ontario senator, but I am from New Brunswick, and I don't believe that people should be having to leave PEI or Northern New Brunswick to go to Alberta to work for oil, but they're going out to get services for longer services. I think that's such an unfair playing field, that we have different treatments for children across this country. The treatment has to be fair, the research has to be there. What I do know from my ongoing relationship with many of you and Vic and Molly and others, the wonderful people I've met within the Autism Society, PEI, as long as we recognize and act in respect to the reality that autism impacts us all. I just said to a person the other day walking through a mall in Ottawa, and there's a young child having a temper, and the reason why we're here tonight is the example set by today's and tonight's guest of honor in this absolutely beautiful place. There's something cozy about PEI. And this room makes it cozy too, and the people in this room make it even better. But our guest of honor, Vic Douse. Now, I put some notes together and I've talked to a few people. Of course, Vic grew up here, he went to university here, his career in computer science brought him to Ottawa, 6 years I guess. But you know, there's a tug of the Maritimes, and Vic came home. And as most of you know, married and 2 daughters, Ashley and Jewel. And at the age 5, and maybe some don't know this, but that Jewel was diagnosed with autism and a seizure disorder, which in the words of you, Colleen, changed the course of your family life. And all of a sudden, someone they love, someone who depends on them, was found to have a condition with many difficult, unpredictable symptoms. And since Vic learned of Jewel's condition, he has committed himself, and I guess I'm talking to the people who know this, but maybe there are 1 or 2 that don't know this, committed himself to researching and ensuring that she receives medical and educational therapies best suited for her. And Jewel is under care of specialists in Halifax, and will soon meet with a metabolical specialist at the University of California in San Diego. Just as autism has no borders, we shouldn't have any borders to go seek treatment and understanding of what's going on. Now, as busy as Vic is pursuing opportunities for Jewel to achieve cognitive and physical gains, he has found a way to blend his objectives for his family with compassion and actions for others impacted by autism. Vic joined the Autism Society PEI in '99, and 1 year later became the president, as you mentioned, and then as a member of the board of directors, Vic, you've constantly been taking a leading role and consistently in building autism awareness across the province. And Vic has also represented this province on issues at the national level with the Autism Society of Canada. You served as vice president, I think, until 2011. And Vic has advocated for people with autism through presentations to various provincial and federal government ministers and departments. And sometimes we forget a bit about the past, because I think you were one of the 4 parties who brought a case before the PEI Human Rights Commission alleging discrimination by the provincial government for using... I'll take out the words later. Okay, I'll say it clearly. Discrimination by the provincial government for using income testing on parents of children receiving benefits from the PEI Disability Support Program. And that was a 6-year struggle, and I think in 2007 the Commission found in favor of the families. And the province has since eliminated discriminatory income testing. But this province, and I'll say it as a Liberal senator, is still not spending, so not in the script that we wrote together, my wife and I and others, that this province has to do more. It really has to do more, like other provinces have to do more, and spend more. And it's not just about autism, it's about all children and adults who have an intellectual disability. We are a caring and a sharing society, and we have to pay more attention. It's not about the money. It's about compassion. It's about empathy. So in preparation for this tribute today, and I only have a few more words, and I was mentioning that there's supposed to be a hook for me to pull me off here, because I'm the son of a United Church minister, and I was a mischievous minister's son, and I grew up in Hamilton, the North Shore, where there's no shore, that's for sure. And my father would be speaking, and my mother, I'd be 12 years old, and my mother would say, she'd be looking up at my dad, and I would say, and I heard my father saying, finally. And I've seen him, and I go, that's the 12th time that Daddy said finally. But you know, this is finally. Although there's one small story to get off the script, we were just talking about the Abaquid. This province, for me, on a very personal level, is a cherished island because my parents, my mother lived in Bayvert, Port Elgin, and my uncle Wendell married Daisy from the island, and we would take the Abaquid ferry to come across here. And when you're 12 years old in 1958, you may as well have gone 5,000 miles to a special island in another place. And this summer I saw the Abaquid in Chicago doing what it's doing for children, helping they say floating restaurant, but it's a yacht club. And so it's helping children again. So what comes around always goes around, you know? So I talked to some of Vic's friends and referred to some of the background. They have said he is personable. And by all accounts, a very funny man.
People at the Shaw building don't say
And by all accounts, a very funny man. But he is dependable, and his commitment to autism issues and to the island is boundless. Above all, he loves his family. Colleen describes her husband's involvement with autism this way, I quote, Vic believes that his daughter and all others affected by autism can achieve their potential with appropriate medical and educational interventions and will continue to strive to achieve the goal of universal access to required interventions based on individual needs. And that brings us to the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, or Jules Medal. And it has been created to commemorate the 60th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II. And it's been a pleasure this year to go across this country because I handed out 4 or 5 medals to those who work in the autism community, those who work with health challenges of turning the health challenges of your daughter Jewel into a cause, and to you, Colleen, too, that has comforted and helped hundreds of families, and that has made Canadians more knowledgeable about autism and more empathetic. We have all gained. We really have all gained from your hard work and your inspiring example. So I do have, I think the medal is there. There's a citation. I have it here. So Vic, do you want to come up? And we'll pin this on you, but I will get away from the podium. And so on behalf of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, I'm pleased to award you the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal, created to mark the 60th anniversary of Her Majesty's accession to the throne. In granting you this honor, I thank you for your dedicated service to your peers, to your community, and to Canada. The contributions you have made to our nation and to your province are most commendable and deserve our praise and admiration. And I wish to convey to you the heartfelt congratulations of your fellow Canadians, to which I add my own. Congratulations. For that. But I'm not going to cry, but I would cry even more if I had to pin this on. So we're going to ask Natalie to pin it on because I'll just pin my finger. So, get that on.
I'm a lefty, so this would get off.
Sorry.
Guys are smarter. So let's, we'll have Vic say a few words, and don't be as long-winded as I was, but I can't help myself. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Senator Munson. He gives you renewed hope in our system, and you have an individual like Senator Munson to speak on your behalf. He's inspirational. He pounds the pavement. He's out there getting the job done, trying to make Canada a better place. And that's a wonderful thing. And we're all very grateful. And thank you for coming, Jim. It means a lot to me. You know, Jeff's been great, Michelle's been great. Jeff is a great uncle. He comes to society as being an uncle, not a parent, and puts a lot of time and effort, hard work into it for no reason but just to make a better place too. And Jeff does a wonderful job. And Jeff's done for years trying to write me a good speech so I could stay on topic. And he's given up the last bunch of years because he knows I won't read it anyway. But I have a real speech here tonight that I am going to read, and I'm going to try to stay on topic because most of you have heard my rants before. So you're not going to get a rant, and I'm going to try to be thankful. Around a month ago, I got a letter from Christine Day, the past president of the Autism Society of Canada, informing me that the society had put my name forward for a Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, or Jules Medal, I like that, and the nomination had been accepted. Now this was a great surprise to me, even though Christine had been emailing me and asking me for my address and my phone number and my civic address, and I think she asked my SIN at some point. And I'm thinking she's just going to send me pictures of the grandkids, or I had to sign some documents for Autism Society Canada, but no. I got this letter and it was a real surprise. Anyway, the initial surprise quickly turned to self-doubt. I said, if I got one, Michael Lewis, president of the Autism Society Canada, sure as hell better got one. Because Michael, as president of the Autism Society of BC, and his wife, Jean, as president of FEET BC, took the fight for equal access to Medicare for children with autism all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, all of Canada as a society lost that bid, even though winning in all the lower courts. It'll go again, and we will win one day. But, you know, it was a big defeat for us. But, you know, they really led the country. I did a little piece here on the end. And again, the people in the know that I'm really only the spokesman for this family. And all the real brains and compassion are my lovely wife, Colleen. And it is her dedication. So for the next 10 years, Colleen and I lived and breathed autism at a provincial, national, international, and home level, which was quite easy for us, as Jewel only slept 3 hours a day. So we had plenty of time on our hands. Colleen and I had spent the whole of our adult lives battling autism issues and the day-to-day struggle of raising Jewel. And our daughter Ashley must also be commended for largely raising herself while we were distracted. Ashley's always been a wonderful child and still is. There are many people here to thank. There's Graham Durden at work, who takes up the slack when I can't. There's Don Pendergast, who's here, who's years been stopping me from making a bigger fool of myself. John McCaskill's here for bringing me home. That's been a big help. My parents for believing me, and for my brother Ryan, who's always been wonderful with his nieces. But once again, I'm only a spokesman. The honor equally belongs to the Taraws, the McLeans, the Marks, the Aikens, the Glants, the Batemans, the Baines, the McKenzies, the Wannacotts, the Reeves, the Campbells, the Zakelins, the Pinos, the Bradleys, the Mullins, the Perrys, the Karens, the Marchbrecks, the Williams, and the Bernards, and all the other families that are fighting for the best possible outcomes of their children while still finding time to love them. I'll admit, I was thrilled about getting the medal. I'm a monarchist. I have a picture of the Queen in my living room. I'm very proud that it does as British heritage. After being awarded this, I thought I'd look it up. It's being awarded in slightly different forms throughout much of the Commonwealth and the UK. And there's 60,000 of them being awarded here in Canada alone. Jim gave up half of them. 30. With Canada's population of 35 million, 60,000, what is 60,000? Pretty good. It works out to 1 in 156 Canadians will receive a medal, which is a fairly high rate, but not as high a rate as some other things in this country. Let's compare the rates of autism in the last 20 years. We went from 1 in 10,000 pre-90s, 1 in 1,000 in 2000s, And I have 1 to 100 for boys now. And the numbers move around a little bit, but still. So a lot more people kind of have kids with autism there are getting medals. And anyone who tells you this is better diagnosis is a fool at best and a liar at worst. Clearly, much more work needs to be done towards finding the root cause of autism. Always remember it is your right to demand full access to your prescribed health care. And once again, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for the part you played in me receiving this honor. It takes a village. Thank you. Natalie does all the work now. Well, thank you for all coming. Bye-bye. This pin's pretty nice too. That's a pretty nice pin too.
Represents, yeah. Awesome.
How's it going to look?
He will have it on too.
Victor, you forgot one thing.
Yes, sir.
You didn't ramble.
I didn't ramble?
No,
Oh, I can ramble.
we know how.
I can ramble.
Vic? And thank you folks for
Did you see the subtle hint from where I sit down?
you folks have all just got to see just a small taste of the passion that Vic brings to this issue. And it's born of a firm sense of right and wrong, and also born of hard-fought personal experience. And he and his family, colleague, and Joel, continue to be an inspiration to families, new and old, living with autism across Prince Edward Island, across Canada, and we'll be a better place to all of you. I must apologize, I am not a professional MC, but there were a couple of folks I wanted to